Hello and welcome to the next edition of the BriefingsDirect Voice of the Customer podcast series. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing discussion on digital transformation success stories. Stay with us now to learn how agile businesses are fending off disruption in favor of innovation. Our next Internet of Things Technology Trends interview explores how innovation is impacting modern factories and supply chains. We'll now learn how a leading-edge manufacturer like Hiro Tech in the automotive industry is taking advantage of IoT and IT combined to deliver dependable, managed, and continuous operations. Here to help us define the best factory of the future attributes, we're joined by Justin Hester, Senior Researcher in the IoT Lab at Hiro Tech Corporation in Hiroshima, Japan. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me.
We're glad you're here. What's happening in the market with business and technology trends that's driving this need for even more modern factories and even more responsive supply chains?
So one of the things we're seeing is our customers are demanding shorter lead times. There's a drive for even higher quality, especially in automotive manufacturing. And also we're seeing a much higher level of customization requests coming from our customers. So how can we create products that better match the unique needs of each customer? And so as we do this and as we look at how can we continue to compete in an ever-competitive environment, that's where we're starting to see the solutions from IoT can help us in those areas.
Mm-hmm. What is it that IoT does to make a factory smarter for those folks that might not be that familiar with it? What is it that IoT brings to the table that you can't or haven't done before?
So within the manufacturing space, we've actually had a lot of data has been there for years now, for decades. In manufacturing, we've been very good at collecting data. The challenges we've had, though, is bringing that data in real time because the amount of data is so large. How do we act on that data quicker, not on a day-by-day basis or week-by-week basis, but actually on a minute-by-minute basis, a second-by-second basis? And how do we take that data and contextualize it? So it's one thing in a manufacturing environment to say, okay, this machine is having a challenge, but it's another thing if I can bring to you and say, this machine is having a challenge, but in the context of the factory, here's how it's affecting downstream processes, and here's what we can do to mitigate those downstream challenges we're going to have. That's where IoT starts bringing us a lot of value. The analytics, the real-time contextualization of that data that we've already had in the manufacturing area is very helpful.
Interesting. So moving from what may have been a gather, batch, analyze, report, we're now taking more discrete analysis opportunities, but injecting that into a wider context of efficiency and productivity. So a fairly big change. This is not incremental. This is kind of like a step change, right?
It's a huge change for the market. It's a huge change for us at Hiro Tech. One of the things we like to talk about is we jokingly call it the Tuesday morning meeting. And so we talk about this idea that in the morning at a manufacturing facility, everyone gets together and talks about what happened yesterday and what we can do today to make up for what happened yesterday. And instead, we're making that huge step change to say, why don't we get the data to the right people with the right context and let them make a decision so they can affect what's going on instead of waiting till tomorrow to react to what's going on. It's a huge step change, but we're really looking at it as how can we take small steps to get to that large goal. In manufacturing areas, there's been a lot of delay, confusion, and hesitancy to move forward because everyone sees the value, but it's this huge change, this huge project. And so at Hiro Tech, we're taking more of a scaled approach and saying, let's start small, let's scale up, let's learn along the way, let's bring value back to the organization. And that's helped us move very quickly.
I'd like to hear more about that success story, but in the meantime, tell us about Hiro Tech, for those who don't know, what role you play in the automotive industry and how you're succeeding in your markets.
Yeah, so Hiro Tech is a large Tier 1 automotive supplier. So what that means is we supply parts and systems directly to the automotive OEMs like Mazda, General Motors, FCA, Ford. And we specialize in door manufacturing as well as exhaust system manufacturing. So every year we make about 8 million doors, 1.8 million exhaust systems. systems. And we provide those systems mainly to Mazda and General Motors, but also we provide that expertise through tooling. So, for example, if an automotive OEM says, we would like Hirotec's expertise in producing these parts, but we'd like to produce them in-house, Hirotec then has a tooling arm where we can provide that tooling for automotive manufacturing. And so it's an interesting company and strategy that allows us to take advantage of data both in our facilities, but then also work with our customers on the tooling side to provide those lessons learned and bring them value there as well.
And give us a sense, if you would, Justin, of how big a distribution we're talking about. How many factories, how many countries, what's the scale here?
So we're based out of Japan, Hiroshima, Japan, but we're actually in 9 countries around the world, currently 27 facilities. And so we have reach into all the major continents with automotive manufacturing. We're in North America, we're in Europe, we're all throughout Asia, in China, India. So we have a large global presence. Anywhere you're finding automotive manufacturing, we're there supporting it. So.
And with that sort of massive scale, very small improvements can turn into some very big benefits. Tell us a little bit about why the opportunity in a manufacturing environment to eke out efficiency and productivity has such big payoffs.
So, especially in manufacturing, what we find when we get to those large scales like you're alluding to is that a 1 or 2% improvement has huge financial benefits. And so the other thing is in manufacturing, especially automotive manufacturing, we tend to standardize our processes. And within Hirotec, we've done a great job of standardizing that world-class leadership in door manufacturing. And so what we find is when we get improvements, not only in IoT but anywhere in manufacturing, if we can get 1 or 2%, not only is that a huge financial benefit, but because we've standardized globally, we can move that to our other facilities very quickly, doubling down on that benefit.
Well, clearly Hirotec sees this as something to really invest in. They've created the IoT Lab. Tell me a little bit about that and how that fits into this.
Yeah, so the IoT Lab is a very exciting new group. It's part of our Advanced Engineering Center, which is a group out of our global headquarters, and this group is tasked with the 5 to 10 year horizon. So they're able to work across all of our global organizations with tooling, with engineering, with production, with sales, and even our global operations groups, our IT groups, and go and find solutions that can bring value anywhere in the organization through bringing in new technologies, new ideas, and new solutions. And so we've formed the IoT Lab to find how can we bring IoT-based solutions into the manufacturing space, into the tooling space, and how actually can those solutions not only help our manufacturing and tooling teams, but also help our IT teams, our finance teams, and our sales teams.
Great. Let's dig back down a little bit into why IT, IoT, and OT, or operational technology, are into this step change, looking for some significant benefits, but being careful in how to institute that. What is it that's required when you move to a more IT focus, a standard platform approach across all the different systems that allows you to eke out some of these great benefits of IoT? Tell me a little bit about how IT as a concept is now working its way into the very edge of the factory floor.
So one of the things we're starting to see is that IT is starting to meld, like you alluded to, with OT, and there really isn't a distinction to OT and IT anymore. And so what we're finding is that as we're starting to get these gains in solutions and how we can move forward, we're working with partners, PTC, HPE, to bring our IT group, our OT group all together within Hirotec and bring value to the organization. And so what we find is there no longer is this, we have a need in OT, that's now we request IT to support, or IT has a need and they go to OT for support. What we're finding is we have organizational needs and we're coming to the table together to make these changes. And that actually within itself is bringing even more value to the organization, because instead of coming last minute to the IT group and saying, hey, we need your support for all these different solutions and we've already got everything set and you're just here to put it in, what we're saying is bring in that expertise, help us out up front, and we're finding better solutions because we're getting experts both from OT and IT. So we're seeing this convergence of these two teams working on solutions to bring value, and they're really moving things, like you said, we're moving everything to the edge. So where everyone talks about cloud-based computing, or maybe it's in their data center, where we're finding value is bringing all these solutions right to the production line. And so we're doing data collection right there, but we're also starting to do data analytics right at the production line level where it can bring the best value in the fastest way.
So it's an auspicious time, because just as you're seeking to do this, the providers of technology are creating micro data centers, and they're creating edge line servers, and they're looking at energy conservation so that they can do this in an affordable, and storage models that can support this at a competitive price. So what is it about the way that IT is evolving and providing platforms and systems that has you and an IoT Lab so excited?
So especially in IoT or IT platforms, what we're seeing is exciting is that originally to do analytics, we had to go up to the cloud. That was the only place where the power existed. And as you said, groups are bringing down, and solution providers are bringing that level of intelligence down to the edge. And so actually we're hearing some exciting things this week and last week from HPE on memory-driven computing. And that's huge for us, because as we start doing these very complex analytics at the edge, we need that power, that horsepower, to run different applications at the same time at the production line. And something like a memory-driven solution is what helps us accomplish that. And so it's one thing to also bring the technology. So we say, hey, we have higher performance computing. But another thing is we need edge computing that's proper for the environment. So in a manufacturing environment, it's not conducive to a standard server as you think of it, right? A standard rack where it needs dust protection and heat protection, and that doesn't exist in a manufacturing environment. So the other thing we're starting to see with edge computing HPE provides with the edge line is that we have computers that have high power, high ability to perform the analytics and data collection capabilities, but they're also proper for the environment. So I don't need to build out a special protection unit with special, temperature control, humidity control, which all drives energy costs, which drives up my costs. Instead, we're able to run edge computing in the environment as it should be, on its own, protected from what comes in a manufacturing environment, and that's huge for us.
Yeah, they're engineering these systems now with these ruggedized micro facilities in mind, and so it's quite impressive that the very best of what a data center can do can be brought to the very worst types of environment, and I'm sure we'll see more of that, and I'm sure we'll see it get even smaller and more powerful. Do you have any examples of where we've already been able to take IoT and the confluence of OT and IT to a point where we can demonstrate entirely sort of new types of benefits? And I know this is still early in the game, but it helps to demonstrate what you can do in terms of efficiency, productivity, analytics. What are you getting when you do this well?
So taking the stepped strategy that we have, we actually started at Hirotec very small with only 8 machines in North America. And we were just looking to see, are the machines on, are they running? And even from there, we saw value because all of a sudden we were getting that real-time contextualized insight into the facility. We then quickly moved over to one of our production facilities in Japan, where we have a brand new robotic inspection system. And this system uses vision sensors, laser sensors, force sensors, and it's actually inspecting exhaust systems before they leave the facility. And we very quickly implemented an IoT solution in that area. And all we did was we said, hey, we just want to get insight into the data. So we want to be able to see all these data points. Over 400 data points are created every inspection. We want to be able to see this data compared in a historical way, so let's bring context to that data, and we want to provide it in real time. And so what we found from just those 2 projects very quickly is we were bringing value to the organization, because now our teams can go in and say, okay, the system's doing its job. It's inspecting things before they leave our facility to make sure our customers always get a high quality product. But now we're able to dive in and find different trends that we weren't able to see before, because all we were doing is saying, okay, this system leaves the facility or this system doesn't. And so already just from that application, we've been able to find ways that our engineers can even increase the throughput and the reliability of this system, because now they have these historical trends. They were able to do a root cause analysis on some improvements that would have taken months of investigation. It was completed in less than a week for us. And so that's a huge value drive, not only in that my project costs go down, but now I'm able to impact the organization quicker. And that's the big thing that Hirotec's seen is it's one thing to talk about the financial cost of a project, or I can say, okay, here's the financial impact. But what we're seeing is that we're moving quicker. And so we're having long-term financial benefits because we're able to react to things much faster. So in this case, we're able to reduce months of investigation down to a week. So that means that when I implement my solution quicker, now I'm bringing impact to the organization even faster, which has long-term benefits. And so we're already seeing those benefits today.
Well, that's great. So you'll obviously be able to improve quality. You'll be able to reduce the time to improving that quality, get predictive in your operations. But it also sounds like you're going to gain metadata insights that you could take back into design for the next iteration of not only the design for the parts, but the design for the tooling as well, and even the operations around that. So that intelligence at the edge can be something that is a full life cycle process. It goes right back to the very initiation of both the design and the tooling.
Absolutely. And so these solutions, they can't live in a silo, right? And so we're really starting to look at these ideas of, some people call it the digital thread, the digital twin, and we're really starting to understand what does that mean as you loop this data back to our engineering teams. What kind of benefits can we see? How can we improve our processes? How can we drive value to the organization? And one of the biggest things with IoT-based solutions is that they can't stay inside this box where we talked about OT to IT. We're talking about manufacturing, engineering. These groups, IoT solutions at their best, all they really do is bring these groups together and bring a whole organization together with more contextualized data to make better decisions faster. And so exactly to your point is we're looping back. We're able to start understanding the benefit we're going to be seeing from bringing these teams together.
Yeah. All right, one last point before we close out. It seems to me as well that at a macro level, this type of data and insight and efficiency can be brought to the entire supply chain. So you're providing certain elements of an automobile. Other suppliers are providing what they specialize in. Having that quality control and integration and reduce time to value or to change, mean time to reduction of issues and so forth, can be applied at a macro level. So how does the automotive supplier itself look at this when it can take into consideration all of its suppliers doing what you're doing at Hirotec?
So it's actually it's a very early phase, right? So a lot of the suppliers are starting to understand what this means for them, and there is definitely a macro benefit that the industry is going to see in 5 to 10 years. But what I would say right now is that suppliers need to start small, right? So one of my favorite pictures is a picture of the ocean and a guy holding a lighter. It's not going to happen. So we see these huge macro benefits of where we're going, but we have to start out somewhere, right? And so a lot of suppliers, what we're recommending to them is do the same thing we did. Just start small with a couple machines. Start getting that data visualized. Start pulling that data into the organization. Once you do that, you can start benefiting from the data and then start finding new use cases. As the industry does that, and as these suppliers all start doing their own small projects and working together, I think that's when we're going to start to see the macro benefits about 5 to 10 years out in the industry.
Well, I can certainly see why the projections for the growth in IoT deployments is so large and maybe even underestimated. So really, thanks for that. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We've been exploring how innovation is impacting modern factories and supply chains. And we've learned how leading-edge manufacturers like Hiro Tech in the automotive industry are making the most of IoT and IT combined to deliver dependable, managed, and continuous operations. Join me in thanking our guest, Justin Hester, Senior Researcher in the IoT Lab at Hiro Tech Corporation in Hiroshima, Japan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to our audience as well for joining us for this Briefings Direct Voice of the Customer Digital Transformation Success Story discussion. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host for this ongoing series of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise-sponsored interviews. Thanks again for listening. Pass this along to your IT community and do come back next time.